Hello there, darlings. I do hope you're all doing well. I want to apologize for not having been on for quite some time. Well, life has been going on as per usual. But now I'm here again, and I hope you will find this video educational and interesting. And now, before I start, for anyone who doesn't know who I am, my name is Samuel Zülli. I'm originally from Switzerland. I am an ex-Scientologist. I grew up as a second-generation Scientologist, meaning I was born in a Scientology family, and I've been doing Scientology courses and auditing since I'm a child. And when I was 9 years old, I signed the so-called billion-year contract, literally dedicating the rest of my life and future lives to serve in the elite group of Scientology called the Sea Org, and to work there for the rest of my life, basically. Then with 13, I joined this Sea Org, and I was there until I was 20 years old. This was in England, by the way, and then I came back to Switzerland. I am now 32 years old, and although I don't look a day over 30, do I? And now last year, in 2023, at the end of the year, I sort of came out for the first time publicly speaking about my experience. And since March of this year, 2024, I have my own channel where I've been putting up some videos. I've done some live chats, interviews, and things like that to just talk about my story, educate a little bit maybe about the subject of Scientology, which can be quite difficult and complex. And so that's a little bit about me. So today I would like to talk about more heavy subject, specifically, part of my story, although this story is unfortunately something that is not unique to me. This has happened, these sort of things, to many ex-Scientology children, or even still in Scientology children or adults who grew up as, Scientologists. And I'd like to talk about trauma. I'd like to talk about neglect as a child, and putting the burden of responsibility on children in Scientology, that everything that happens to you is basically your fault, or maybe not even your fault, but it is things that you have decided to do, right? So, for example, me having signed the billion-year contract when I was 9 years old, well, I was the one who decided to do that. So it is my responsibility. It is my fault. I cannot blame my parents for that, I cannot blame Scientology for that, because I made a conscious decision of signing this contract. Now, of course, for anyone outside of Scientology or such a group, this sounds completely insane. How can a 9-year-old child consent to such a thing, But you see, in Scientology, the belief system is that when you are a child, really, you're just an adult in a small body. Because in Scientology, you believe that you are a spiritual being called a thetan, that when you pass away, this body, this flesh body, as Scientology like to call it, like a meat bag, it passes on, and then you as a spirit, you just get reborn again, and again. And the whole point of Scientology is to basically break the cycle, so that you don't have to be reborn again, to make you spiritually so aware, so powerful, that you can actually go on living and do whatever you want to do outside of a physical body. And that is what basically Scientology is promising it would do. And so naturally, children are just seen as adults in small bodies, because they are millions and trillions of years old. I mean, they've been mothers, they've been fathers, they've been daughters, they've been uncles, thousands of times. And so children are not really seen as a group that needs to be protected, a group that needs to be taken care of, a group that needs to be protected from other people, from themselves, as well as from such thing as a billion-year contract, for example. And I remember as a child, I did complain to my mother or to my father about different things that I had to do as a Scientologist. And what my mother always told me is, well, it is your own fault. Well, it's your own fault. You chose this. I apparently consciously chose this body. I consciously chose this family, this Scientology family, to be born there. And so therefore, I cannot blame her, or I cannot blame anyone but myself. It is on me to basically own up to the fact that, this is what I've chosen to do, and now I need to just get on with it, basically. Twice I even ran away from home, and then the same thing happened. And she's also told me that I'm a so-called returnee, meaning that in my past life I was a Scientologist, but have not made it up far enough on the bridge of total freedom, where you're supposed to get these superpowers as a thetan called, on the OT levels, on the operating thetan levels. Again, the spirit is called a thetan, and then when you become an operating thetan, that's the point where you start to get these superpowers, so that you become more powerful as a spiritual being, and you become less and less dependent, apparently, of the actual physical body as well as the physical universe. And so apparently I didn't quite reach it up that, which is why I was reborn again. And when I questioned that, she simply said, well, that I told her that, apparently, before I was even able to speak. So I'm not quite sure how I did that, but that sort of thing was always used sort of to basically tell me to shut up and get on with it. And I always had to do Scientology. I always had to do these courses. As soon as I finished a course, I had to do another course. And of course, I wrote success stories and wrote, oh, this was a great course, I enjoyed doing it. But really, looking back as a child, all I was wanting to do is to make my parents happy, to make them proud. And me doing these courses, me doing auditing and things like that, that is something that made them happy, made them proud. And so, of course, that's what I did. I didn't really enjoy doing it. There were some courses that I thought that were funny, they were interesting. I did enjoy doing it as a child. Also now as an adult, not so much anymore, not as intense as it was when I was a child. But when I was a child, I was very introverted. And what do introverted children or people do in general, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s? Well, we would read. So I did a lot of reading. And so naturally, doing Scientology, the courses came very easy to me. I was quite a fast reader at the time. And I did a lot of courses when I was a child. When I was 8 years old, I did the so-called purification rundown, which is the very first step of Scientology, which is a very abusive thing to the body, because what you have to do, you have to be in a sauna for several hours a day, up to 5 hours, I believe. You have to go jog, you have to go run, and the whole idea is you need to sweat out all the toxins that are in your body. And the idea, to put it in a simplified version, is to purify your body, clean your body, so that then you can go on to purify and clean your soul, or rather yourself, because in Scientology you don't believe that you have a soul. In Scientology you are the soul, basically. You are the soul occupying the body. So that's the sort of the idea behind the purification rundown. And you have to take an immense amounts of different vitamins. Now, vitamins you can split into two. You have water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble vitamins. The water-soluble vitamins, you can take overdoses of these. You can take too much, and the body just gets rid of them through the urine. But fat-based vitamins, they can actually remain in your body, and they can cause harm. They can actually cause harm to your liver, to your kidney, and different organs if you take far too much. Or they can have different reactions. For example, something you have to take on the purif is niacin. This is a B vitamin, and the daily dosage of it is just a few milligrams. But we had to take thousands and thousands of milligrams a day. And when you take a huge overdoses, what happens is that you get different rashes on your body, become very hot, very irritated, a little itchy, and that basically rises also the temperature of your body. Combine that with being inside a sauna, is just dreadful. I mean, I was a very, very skinny child. Not because my mother didn't give me enough food or anything like that. It's just, I just happened to be very skinny. And so when I was in the sauna, it happened twice that I just fainted. My body just couldn't take it. It was just too much for my body. And rather than calling a doctor, sending me to the hospital, I was just taken out of the sauna, put on one of those laying chairs that was just in front of the sauna. And I just laid there until I woke up. And there was no there was no concern or anything like that. It's just, oh well, this is quite normal. This probably means because there are some intense toxins leaving your body, and you're being re-stimulated, meaning you are being put in a state of unconsciousness and pain because of these toxins leaving your body, and that is probably why you fainted. There's no concern for a child like that, and of course I do blame Scientology for that, but the blame also has to be put on the parents. Now, I do not have any hatred towards my parents or anything like that. I've already forgiven them for all the different things. I mean, this is just one example. But, I've come to realize that they also were victims. And I know that what they did because they were convinced this was the best sort of thing for me, for my brother, for my sister. I'm completely certain they never did anything thinking, they're purposely harming me in some sort of way, and I'm not expecting them to beg for forgiveness or anything like that. It would be nice to have a proper conversation with them about it, for them to say, we really thought this was the right thing, and we effed up, we made a mistake, and we're really sorry that happened. Let's talk about it. Let's try to heal from that. Let's try to move on or something like that. And it's just something that it just can't be done at the moment for various reasons that I'm not going to get into right now. But it's just, there's no willingness, as we would say in Scientology, there's no willingness on their part to do that, to own up to it, to show accountability, to show wanting to help to heal, and to try to understand as well why I am upset about what happened, why I'm still upset, why it still is a trauma for me, and why I feel the need to talk about it and not leave the past in the past, especially because I know these sort of things are still happening, and they have to happen because it is Hubbard, it is policy. Everything that Hubbard wrote to do and so on and so forth, you have to keep going. You cannot change the technology. And that is why I know and I'm convinced these sort of things are still happening. Another example of neglect on my mother's part. I mean, I was barely a year old, maybe a year and a few months, and my mother had just divorced my father, my genetical father, and she decided, obviously with encouragement from Scientology, to go to Flag. Again, we were in Switzerland, to go to Flag, to America, a different continent, to train to become a supervisor. And I think she also did clear. I can't quite remember exactly. Can't remember. I was barely a year old, but just from what I was told later on, I'm pretty sure she did clear, and maybe also did supervisor course. In any case, she was supposed to be gone for 6 months, and she would have just left her 3 children with a man that she had just recently met and just gotten together. It was her boyfriend. But they have just gotten together very recently, and she just dumped her 3 children. I was barely a year old. My brother was 4 years old. My sister was 5 years old. With this young man he would have been 26, 27 years old, something like that. And she just went off for 6 months, which is already outrageous. But as a matter of fact, it ended up being about 2.5 years that she was gone, right? And she just left her children like that with no concern at all. And that is sort of this sort of pattern has been throughout my childhood, that children were very often just as a second thought, that Scientology was the most important. Now, of course, there were many weekends that my parents said, okay, no, this weekend we're gonna do stuff with the children. It was almost every weekend, really. And also when it was my birthday, they did, or my sibling's birthday and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that, I had the worst possible experience as a child, of course not. But these are just, these sort of very casual, neglective and sort of abusive behavior that are done to children in a sort of very nonchalant sort of way, with no sort of, it's like living with adults, and then you just go away as an adult somewhere else, and the other adults are then at home, and it's like, why would you see that as being a neglect in any sort of way? And that is how children are viewed. Children are viewed as adult in small bodies. So in her mind, I'm convinced she didn't see any problem in that at all. There was no problem in her mind at all. And yeah, so these are just some examples of neglect and abuse. Apart from the fact, of course, that my parents allowed that neither I nor my siblings ever finished school. My brother and my sister, they left to join the Siok when they were both 14 years old, never finished school. I left to join the Siok later on when I was 13 years old. Me neither. I never finished school. And all three of us have then left the Siok, so my two siblings and I, and we still haven't finished school. We haven't had, we didn't go to college or higher education. Well, I did a higher education. I went to culinary school. I did an apprenticeship as a chef, but I did this rather despite of Scientology, I would say. And my other siblings, they haven't done any of that because they didn't have the funds, the opportunities, the know-how, how the world outside of Scientology operates and really works, and what things are out there to help you out to, when you're in that sort of difficult situation. Because we grew up in Scientology, so we didn't really understand how the world outside works. And sometimes I still even find myself now, years after having left the Siok and living in reality, in the normal world, I sometimes find myself in a situation where everybody else seems to know exactly what to do, almost instinctively, and I have no idea how I'm supposed to react, right? So that can sometimes be a little awkward and amusing at times. And so yeah, these are things that are still happening now. And I would say, due to my upbringing, and as well later on, realizing that I am in fact homosexual, and homosexuality in Scientology is very much frowned upon. In Scientology, there's such a thing called the tone scale, a scale where you can put the people on a different level of emotion. And the whole reason why you have that is so that you can spot a person, see a person, and then you can spot their tone on this chart, and then determine how you're going to talk to them so that you don't come into a conflict with them, that you can raise them up the tone, because the higher you are, the better it is, and it goes from plus 40 to minus 40, 0.00 being body death. So you can even be in a condition below body death. And homosexuality is considered to be 1.1. And Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, said that anyone who is below 2.0 is basically actively evil and is trying to destroy humanity. And you need to avoid such people. So just for being homosexual, or anyone below the tone of 2.0, they don't even have to do anything. They just have to exist, and their existence itself causes the destruction of humanity. And so I grew up with this. I knew this as a child. I learned the tone scale very early on, and I knew homosexuality was an evil thing. So when I came to realize, when I was about 16 years old, and again, when I was 16 years old, I was working for the elite group of Scientology called the Sea Org, where you can sort of compare like a monk or like a nun, where you have very little personal possession. You don't have any free time. You have very little money. You get every week a small allowance. My allowance was about, I would say, an average about 15 pounds a week. Sometimes it was 20 pounds, sometimes it was 25 pounds, sometimes it was no pay, sometimes it was 4 pounds. I mean, it was a very small amount, right? You have no free time. You are, well, technically speaking, you have every 2 weeks, you can have half of a day off, but to be able to get a day off is so difficult. It requires so much hassle, so much, you need to write a so-called CSW, a completed staff work, ask for permission. Okay, can I go? And you're not allowed to just ask for permission. You have to find a replacement, somebody who takes over your job. The only trouble is that you work every day 16 hours. I work from 7 o'clock in the morning until usually 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes I was able to go 1 hour earlier at 10 o'clock. And sometimes I had to stay a little later, until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then the next day still start at 7 o'clock in the morning in the kitchen doing the breakfast for the crew, right? And trying to find somebody else replacing you doing your job when they themselves have to work 16 or even 18 hours a day is so difficult that many Silk members, they don't even try to take a day off, and I very rarely took a day off. And so growing up growing up and working this environment, and then realizing that I'm homosexual, I mean, that was the most devastating thing for me. It was, I felt disgusting. I felt like a parasite. I felt like a hazard about to happen, like a ticking time bomb, and I was about to poison everybody or whatever, because I was working in the kitchen at the time. And again, homosexual is considered 1.1, and the description of 1.1 is covert hostility. So somebody who pretends to be nice, pretends to be your friend, but really they are trying to harm you in some way. And I genuinely thought that perhaps I'm so covert in my hostility that I don't even realize that I'm about to poison the whole crew. I'm about to burn the food. I'm about to do something to cause great harm to the crew, right? And the Sea Org is considered the most elite, the most ethical group in the world. And so I was struggling so much with just realizing that I'm homosexual, of course denying it as much as possible, that cannot be true, that cannot be true. And at the same time, I had a conflict because I was working very well. I was well liked while I was in the Sea Org. I raised the standard of the food to a very high level, and people generally enjoyed coming to eat the staff food, even though I had a pitiful amount of money. I had about £2,000 for 350 people. 350 people, I had to cook 3 meals a day. Okay, so it's £2,000 a week, not a day, a week. So I had to cook 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. So that's 21 meals, £2,000 divided by 350 people. You can do the math. It's just, it is a pathetic amount per meal, per person. And, it was very difficult to try to make something nice, but it was so important to me to make people happy with the meal, because I knew that even though you had a long and hard day, if you have a good meal, it just makes such a difference. A good meal and good night's rest. Obviously I couldn't influence a good night's rest, but I could influence the meal, and that was very important to me, and it made me very happy. I mean, even now, I still work as a chef now, although now on a professional level. Of course, I went to culinary school, I did my apprenticeship. Even now, when I cook food for my friends at home or at the restaurant, and I can see the people enjoying it, smiling and complimenting, that is something that gives me a lot of joy. And back then, that was the same thing. And it was very important to me to do that. So at one hand, I knew I was a good staff member. I was liked. I was doing a good job. But on the other hand, I knew I was filth. I was disgusting. I was useless. I was genuinely evil. And that was an inner struggle that was eating me from the inside, really. And this was from the age of 16 until I left with 20. So for 4 years, it was the most horrible time of my life. And it was, I was really going insane. Honestly, I was going insane. It was a very dark time for me, and almost naturally, the thoughts of self-harm came to me, of suicide. I wanted to kill myself, because again, going back to what I said in the beginning, that Scientologists believe that you are an immortal spiritual being. You've lived thousands and thousands of lives, and so naturally, you look at death in a very casual sort of way. You don't say, like when you are Scientologists and a Scientology friend passes away, of course you'll be sad, you might be a little upset about it, but you'll get over it very quickly. And some people are not even sad at all, because to them it's just, well, all right, I'll just see them again. They'll just be reborn, and then I will see them again. They will come back, they'll start working again here, so maybe in 20 years or so I will see them again. So it's not a big deal, really. And so to me, that was the same thing. I was like, well, it seems the most logical solution is to kill myself. And then there's 50-50 chance to be born as a woman. And then when I'm born as a woman, and this attractiveness towards men is perfectly fine then, right? Because then I would be heterosexual. So it's perfect. And that seemed very logical to me. And and I didn't really, it wasn't like, I didn't see any other solution. It just seemed to me that is the only solution. And so, of course, you cannot do that while you're working in the SIOC. I had to communicate that. I was then routed out of the SIOC. And during that time, I genuinely thought, during the time of me being routed out, that they will say, oh no, Sammy, you're very important to us. I mean, look how you increase the standard, how everybody's so happy with your food. We want to help you. We want to provide certain services for you, doing auditing, trying to heal that homosexuality. Because see, homosexuality is considered to be an aberration. An aberration is basically an abnormality. It's a blip on the radar that shouldn't be there, right? That's an aberration, basically. And in Scientology, you do what is called auditing. Usually you do this with assistance of a so-called e-meter. And this machine sends a very small amount of electrical current through your body, and there's a needle, and the needle reacts to certain questions being asked, to apparently certain thoughts that you have, and then the needle does something, and then the auditor, the person who is actually handling the e-meter, this machine, will be able to determine whether you're telling the truth, whether there's maybe more to the answer, and so on and so forth. They can dig into that. And the point of auditing is to get rid of aberrations. So you are free of aberrations, because aberrations, they will influence your life. They will be a hindrance to you in different sort of ways. And so, of course, homosexuality is an aberration. So through auditing, you should be able to get rid of homosexuality, get rid of aberration. Instead of praying the gay away, you can audit the gay away. And I genuinely thought that they might want to do that. Now, I mean, apart from that, I just thought they would want to do something, trying to convince me to stay and try to handle it in a different way. But no, they very casually said, yeah, that's a good idea to root out of the SIOC and then kill yourself. Because if you were to do that while you are a staff member in the SIOC, that will cause black PR. You know, newspaper will write about that, you know, a staff member of Scientology and so on and so forth. But if I'm not a staff member anymore and then I kill myself, it might not even end up in the newspaper really. Or if anything, it's just going to be a mention, but not connected with Scientology. And of course, I was very much still a believer, and I didn't want to harm Scientology. And so I ended up rooting out, and I've had 3 suicides attempt so far. Although I am convinced I am not going to do that anymore, although these urges in me, they do bubble under the surface, but I would say they bubble quite below under the surface, because I am in a much better place now. Now, there are, of course, days where, you know, my depression gets the better of me, but it's usually just a couple of days, and then it's fine again. And that is something I'm still working on, of course, but it has improved. And that is all I wanted to talk to you guys actually about Scientology. For me, for children growing up, is neglect, is harmful, is abusive, and can turn to self-loathing, self-harm, as it has been in my case. And I would like to do a part 2 of this talk, where I will be talking about the sort of things I've done to try to handle and control my self-harm, my self-hate, as well as I just thought it would be interesting to maybe talk about the different things I've noticed about myself before I try to kill myself. Sort of things to maybe look out for if you maybe have a friend, if you have a family member who might be, you know, have tendencies, these sort of things, and they may have talked about it. Maybe this can help you to sort of spot, you know, when they are on a low time, and it could be dangerous. They become dangerous to themselves. You know, there are certain things I did. There's certain things the way I talked and so on and so forth, that I've noted just before I tried to commit suicide, right? So I will be talking about that as well in the hopes that it is helpful. Of course, every person is different, and it might be different for every other person, but I do hope it can still be informative and helpful to some degrees. I want to thank you for having watched till the end this video of mine. I know it was not a very happy or cheerful subject, but I think it is a very important subject. It is important to me. It is important because of so many Scientology children who grew up in this sort of way, in this sort of environment, and I feel very much for them, and I know there's still children now in Scientology, and I want to bring awareness to this, talk about my own experience, my own story, in the hopes that this is educational, that this is helpful, this might encourage somebody else to talk about this subject, this aspect of their experience in Scientology, growing up in Scientology, and so on and so forth. I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, if you like my style, my sort of content. Don't worry, I do have more funny content and cheerful content too. And do give this a like. Do write in the comment sections. Maybe just leave a comment, ask a question. Don't be shy. Ask anything you like. I also have an email address. You can send an email to me at thespchef@gmail.com. There will be in my description, I will put my email address there too. And now to sort of end off this little depressing chat, I'd like to leave you with a little joke I heard recently. When does a joke become a dad joke? Well, when it becomes a parent. Anyway, and with that, I do wish you a most excellent and marvelous day. Goodbye.